My husband refused to believe his kids were terrorizing me. I made him experience exactly what they put me through. When I married my husband, I knew I wasn't just marrying him. I was marrying into a family. He had 2 children from his first marriage. Emma was 14, Liam was 12. I'd never expected them to call me mom. I didn't want to replace their mother. All I wanted was mutual respect. At first, things were manageable. They were distant, which I understood. Divorce is hard. A new marriage is harder. I figured time, patience, and consistency would eventually help us build some kind of relationship. Instead, things slowly got worse. It started with small acts that were easy to dismiss. I'd unload the dishwasher. An hour later, every clean plate would somehow be back in the sink. I'd fold laundry. Someone would dump it onto the floor. Food I bought for the week mysteriously disappeared overnight. When I politely asked about any of it, both kids insisted they had no idea what I was talking about. My husband, Mark, always had the same explanation. They're just kids. I wanted to believe him, so I let it go. Then the little things became bigger. My laptop charger vanished the day before an important presentation. Someone squeezed shampoo all over my work clothes. A birthday gift my sister mailed to me disappeared from the front porch after one of the kids brought the packages inside. Every time I brought it up, Mark defended them. He said I had no proof. He insisted I was taking innocent mistakes personally. According to him, I was trying too hard to be the strict stepmother. I stopped bringing things up. Not because the behavior stopped. Because I was tired of being treated like the problem. Then came the incident that changed everything. I had spent nearly 6 hours preparing dinner for Mark's parents' anniversary: roasted chicken, homemade bread, dessert from scratch. His entire family was coming over. About 30 minutes before everyone arrived, I stepped outside to water the flowers. When I came back inside, the kitchen looked like a disaster zone. Flour covered the counters. The sauce had been dumped into the sink. The chicken was lying on the floor. Emma and Liam were standing in the middle of the kitchen laughing. The moment they saw me, they stopped. Not because they felt guilty. Because they heard Mark walking in from the garage. Within seconds, they both started crying. Emma claimed I'd been yelling at them. Liam insisted they were only trying to help cook. Mark looked at the ruined kitchen, then looked at me. Before I could say a single word, he sighed. He asked why I couldn't just be more patient with them. That sentence hurt more than the destroyed dinner. I wasn't angry because of the food. I was angry because he'd automatically assumed I was at fault. Again. That night, after everyone went home, I tried one last time to explain. I described months of missing belongings. Broken household items. The constant sabotage. The lies. Mark listened quietly. Then he shook his head. He told me he simply couldn't imagine his children behaving that way. He said if they really were doing all those things, surely he'd have seen it himself. That's when I realized the problem. He never saw it. Because they never did it when he was around. And if seeing was the only thing that would convince him, then seeing was exactly what I was going to give him. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten to leave. I didn't punish the kids. Instead, I came up with a plan. For the next 2 weeks, I stopped cleaning up after them. If Liam left his backpack in the hallway, I stepped over it. If Emma left makeup covering the bathroom counter, I left it exactly where it was. If dirty dishes piled up in the sink, they stayed there until Mark noticed. Normally, I would have quietly taken care of everything before he got home. This time, I didn't. By the 3rd day, he asked why the house looked so messy. I simply smiled and told him I'd been busy. He shrugged and cleaned the kitchen himself. The following morning, he couldn't find his work shoes. After 20 minutes of searching, he discovered them hidden behind the washing machine. He assumed he'd misplaced them. I said nothing. The next day, his car keys disappeared. He was nearly late for work before finding them inside the freezer. Again, he laughed it off as forgetfulness. I stayed quiet. Then his phone charger vanished. A remote control disappeared. Someone switched the sugar with salt in his morning coffee. His favorite tie was cut cleanly down the middle. Every single thing that had happened to me for months started happening to him. At first, he blamed himself. Then he blamed bad luck. Eventually, he became frustrated. One evening, after spending nearly an hour looking for his wallet, he slammed a kitchen drawer shut and muttered that someone had to be messing with him. I calmly asked who he thought it could be. He frowned. He said maybe the kids were playing pranks. I reminded him that he had no proof. The words sounded familiar. Because they were his own. He looked at me for a second. Then looked away. The next weekend, I suggested something simple. I told him I wanted to visit my sister for the afternoon. That meant he would be home alone with Emma and Liam for nearly 6 hours. Normally, I would have stayed to help with lunch, laundry, and everything else. This time, I kissed him goodbye and left. I didn't actually go to my sister's house. I drove to a nearby cafe and waited. About 3 hours later, my phone rang. It was Mark. He sounded exhausted. He asked if I could come home early. I asked why. There was a long silence. Then he admitted the kids had somehow flooded the upstairs bathroom. Someone had poured an entire bottle of dish soap into the washing machine. The dog had been let into the pantry, where it tore open bags of flour and rice. And somehow, his laptop now had permanent marker scribbled across the screen. I asked what happened. He sighed. Then quietly admitted something. Every time he walked into a room, the kids acted perfectly innocent. But the second he turned his back, something else was destroyed. For the first time, he sounded exactly the way I'd sounded for the past year. I drove home without saying another word. When I walked through the front door, the house looked like a tornado had passed through it. Mark was sitting at the kitchen table with his head in his hands. Emma and Liam were upstairs. He looked at me. His expression wasn't angry anymore. It was confused, defeated. Then he asked me the question I'd been waiting months to hear. Has it really been like this the whole time? I looked him in the eye and quietly answered, no. He frowned. I continued, it's actually been worse. Mark didn't respond right away. He just sat there, staring at the ruined kitchen. For the first time since we'd been married, he wasn't looking for an excuse. He was looking at the evidence. I didn't say, I told you so. There was no point. He already knew. That night, after the kids went to their rooms, Mark asked me to tell him everything. Not just the big incidents. Everything. So I did. I told him about the missing charger before my work presentation. The shampoo poured over my clothes. The birthday gift that mysteriously disappeared. The food that kept vanishing. The laundry dumped on the floor. The dozens of tiny acts that, by themselves, seemed insignificant. But together, they made me feel like I wasn't welcome in my own home. As I talked, Mark became quieter and quieter. Finally, he admitted something. He'd noticed that I seemed more anxious over the past year. He'd assumed I was just struggling to adjust to becoming a stepmother. He never stopped to ask whether there was another reason. The next morning, he called Emma and Liam into the living room. For the first time, I wasn't the one trying to explain what had happened. He was. He calmly asked them about the flooded bathroom. They blamed each other. Then he asked about his ruined laptop. They claimed it was an accident. He asked about the missing keys. The cut tie. The salt in his coffee. Every answer was another excuse. Finally, he asked one question neither of them expected. Have you been doing these same things to Sarah? Both kids froze. Neither answered. The silence lasted almost 30 seconds. Then Liam quietly admitted that most of the pranks had been his idea. Emma immediately interrupted. She said it wasn't fair to blame only him. Within minutes, the truth started coming out. They admitted to hiding my belongings, destroying my dinner, throwing away mail, deleting recordings from the security doorbell because they didn't want anyone seeing what they were doing. That last sentence caught both of us completely off guard. Mark frowned. He asked what they meant. Emma reluctantly admitted something neither of us knew. Months earlier, she'd figured out the password to the camera app on the family tablet. Whenever she or Liam got caught on camera doing something they weren't supposed to, they simply deleted the clips before either of us watched them. Mark immediately grabbed the tablet. Sure enough, the recycle folder still contained dozens of deleted recordings. Neither child had realized the files stayed there for 30 days before disappearing forever. Mark restored every video. We spent the next hour watching them. There they were. Emma pouring flour all over the kitchen after I'd left the room. Liam hiding my work charger behind the water heater. Both of them laughing while dumping my folded laundry onto the garage floor. One clip hit Mark the hardest. It showed me quietly cleaning up a mess they'd created. Not yelling. Not complaining. Just silently picking everything up by myself. As soon as I walked away, the two of them walked back into the room and destroyed it again. Then they laughed. Mark stopped the video. He couldn't watch anymore. He looked absolutely devastated. Not just because of what the kids had done, because he'd spent months convincing himself, and me, that none of it was real. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. Then he said the words I'd waited more than a year to hear. I failed you. I shook my head. No. You failed all three of us. because the truth was bigger than me. His children hadn't just learned how to lie. They'd learned that if they lied convincingly enough, their father would always believe them over everyone else. And that lesson had nearly destroyed our family before he even realized he was teaching it. The next day, Mark did something I never expected. He called his ex-wife. Not to blame her. Not to start another argument. He simply wanted to know if the kids had ever behaved this way at her house. There was a long silence on the other end of the call. Then she admitted they had. For years. She told him Emma and Liam had played the same games with babysitters, teachers, and even her previous boyfriend. They would hide belongings, break things, lie about what happened, then act innocent when confronted. Whenever adults disagreed about what had happened, the kids learned they could manipulate the situation. She confessed that she'd been too embarrassed to tell him. She thought he'd accuse her of being a bad parent. Instead, the truth had followed them into our home. That conversation changed everything. For the first time, Mark stopped asking, "Did they really do it?" He started asking, "Why are they doing it?" Within a month, both kids were in counseling. So were Mark and I. Family therapy wasn't easy. The first few sessions were filled with denial, excuses, and silence. But slowly, things began to change. Emma eventually admitted she had been terrified that if she accepted me, she'd somehow be betraying her mother. Liam confessed that he thought if he made me miserable enough, I'd leave. And his parents might get back together. Those feelings were understandable. Their actions weren't. Therapy helped them learn the difference. As for consequences, they were real this time. The kids paid me back for every damaged item through chores and money from birthdays and allowances. The tablets and gaming consoles disappeared for months. There were no more excuses. No more, "They're just kids." Most importantly, whenever they lied, Mark no longer defended them automatically. He listened first. Then he looked at the facts. That single change transformed our home more than anything else. About a year later, Emma knocked on my office door while I was working. She awkwardly handed me a small gift bag. Inside was a new coffee mug. Mine had been one of the first things she'd secretly broken after I moved in. She quietly admitted she'd always known I loved that mug. She just hadn't cared at the time. Then she apologized. Not because her father made her, because she finally understood how much she'd hurt me. A few weeks later, Liam surprised me by replacing the cookbook he'd ruined during the infamous anniversary dinner. He'd spent months saving money from mowing lawns in the neighborhood. The receipt was still tucked inside the cover. I still have it. People sometimes ask whether making Mark experience what I went through was manipulative. Maybe it was. But I didn't invent anything. I didn't exaggerate. I simply stopped protecting him from the reality I had been living every day. Sometimes people don't understand another person's pain because they don't want to. Sometimes they don't understand because they've never had to experience it themselves. Mark finally did. Looking back, the hardest part wasn't the hidden keys, the ruined dinners, or the destroyed belongings. It was standing in my own home, telling the truth over and over, while the person who promised to stand beside me kept saying, "I'm sure there's another explanation." Trust doesn't disappear all at once. It fades every time someone chooses doubt over listening. Fortunately, trust can also return. Not through promises, through actions. Today, our home isn't perfect, no family's is. But it's peaceful. The laughter is real. The apologies are sincere. And everyone who lives under our roof now understands one simple rule: respect isn't something you earn by being believed. It's something you show by telling the truth. Even when it's uncomfortable to hear. In the end, I didn't need revenge. I only needed my husband to see what had been happening all along. Once he finally opened his eyes, our family had a chance to heal.